Welcome to the CareSoft demonstration. In this demonstration, we will go over the setting up and onboarding of your agency, the day-to-day tracking of progress notes, medications, and all the important forms. We'll cover reporting and also calendaring. So first off, how to get started with CareSoft. On the website, you will see a sign up for 30-day trial. You'll simply just click on that. Once you've entered the information on the sign-up trial, you just have to enter some basic information here, name, company, and if you have questions, you can also enter them. Make sure you check the I agree, and then just click submit. After you've entered that, you will go to a page where you enter your credit card information. We do not charge you. You have a 30-day free trial, and then the next step is you will be emailed a username, password, and an agency code so you can log into CareSoft. Now, once you've logged into CareSoft, you will see a screen that looks just like this. Now, as the person who's just set up the account, you will be automatically an administrator of the account, and being an administrator means that you have access to the Edit Agency, and that's the first place you'd want to go. So you go ahead and click on Edit Agency. After you've clicked on Edit Agency, it will pull in some of the information from during your sign up, like your company name. You can enter your provider information. A couple of things that I want to point out that's important to change. There are lots of options here, but you can come back to them. But the most important one is, what do you call your clients? So for instance, if you call your client resident, then you'd want to change that, because throughout the software, your staff and everyone will understand that, okay, this is related to our residents, and it's important for us to, call our residents, or call our clients the right name so that it resonates throughout the software. You'll see that as I go through the demonstration. Other things, for instance, what's your primary identification that you use for your clients? If it's a Medicaid number, you can put that. If it's UCI number, what's the secondary number that you use? You can also enter that information as well. You can see there's some hovers here. You can always click on them to get more information. Another one that's important is, how do you track your goals? Because you want to set this up right away so that when you're tracking goals, it starts calculating that information, whether it's met, partially met, or not met, or if you use independent verbal modeling, physical, or refuse. So those are two options. Other couple things that are very important. One is the forms that you will use. So CareSoft has a number of forms here that you can see. However, we also have additional custom forms that we can add for your agency at any time. If there's a form that you really need, you can send it to us and we can build that form for you. We charge $50 an hour for forms. Most forms can be completed within 3 to 7 hours of work. So roughly between $150 and maybe $350 as far as completing a form. So if you don't see a form here, we can build a form for you, but most of our agencies are able to get started without adding any additional forms. It's only if you have something very custom that you want to add. Now, as far as forms that we have all the standard forms that you would need in order to manage your agency. For instance, here, ones that are important, we see things like progress notes, medications, medication logs. But the purpose of this section is to determine who should have access to which forms. So for instance, a good example, if you scroll down to the staff form, you'll see here that your admins and managers have access to that form, but your staff do not. And the reason why is because you typically wouldn't want your staff to delete other staff, edit other staff, or add other staff. So the forms that you don't want them to see, you simply uncheck them. So for instance, if your managers and admins are the ones that's adding in new behaviors and not your staff, then you would uncheck them. The best thing is to remove any form that your staff and your administrators don't use, because it reduces the clutter on your home page, and then they only see the forms that they're using on a day-to-day basis. All right, so that's how you would decide who has access to what forms. All right, so let's just hide that. If you're tracking billing using the software, you have some options here. If you turn on track billing on progress notes, that means the billing information will display on the progress notes. So when you're entering progress notes, you can track, the mileage, you can track the location, you can track the hours, the units being used, etc. Then you have the option of tracking with just a service code, or you can track with service code and authorization code. Now the difference between that is that some agencies, they want to just track based on a service code. Here's all the information that I want to bill on. Other agencies want to track based on authorization code. So for instance, each individual client or resident may have a separate authorization code. They may have multiple authorization codes. If you choose that, then you will actually go to the actual resident or client and put in the authorization codes specifically for that resident, and we will track based on that. Okay? You can choose how many units is, your time of units. So for instance, if your one unit is 15 minutes, then you can track that. If one unit is 1 hour, 1 day, you can just put whatever that is. And so when we're calculating the units that have been used, we'll be able to say, okay, for instance, if someone used 1 hour of service and the number of units is 15 minutes, we'll know that 4 units were used. And you can add as many of these service codes as you want. Okay, and you can delete the ones that you don't want as well. Staff's training and certification. This is another section that allows you to track the training and certifications that you want your staff to complete. Now, this is just defining the training and certifications. This is not where we actually track it. So you can just click plus to add as many as you want, and you can remove the ones you don't. Same thing with the staff checklist. You can add as many as you want, and you can also delete the ones that you don't want. And when you can also show and hide this section. Same thing with individuals. If you have certain checklist items that you want to track for individuals or for residents, you can track that in this software as well. Okay, and when the actual tracking of it, we'll show you that in a future screen. Agency resources, you can add as many links that you want. So for instance, let's say it's important for your staff to also log into their another service, and maybe you have something else that your staff needs to complete, another software that you need to use. You can just add those links here, and then they will show up here on the left side in a resource link section. So for instance, let me just put in, for now I'm just going to put in, let's just say Google. Let's just actually put Google here. And then we'll just say Google. And also you'd want to upload your company logo, because this will show up on all the forms that we print out. So it's important to upload that. And once you're done, you just simply click submit. Now that you click submit, if we go back home, what you'll notice here, you'll see it says staff and resident. So before it said staff and individual. So now throughout the software, you'll see staff and individual. Now the first 2 forms, you always see staff and resident if you have access to those forms. And then from there on out, you will see a list of the remaining forms. Okay? The rest of the forms are sorted A to Z. All right? Let's see here. So first off, like I said, we will cover the onboarding. So first thing in onboarding is adding staff into the system. So let's go ahead and click add to add the staff in the system. Now the only thing that's required to add staff in our system is first name, last name. You need to put in an access level. Okay, so the access level, we have staff, manager, and admin. Between the manager and admin, the access is exactly the same except for one exception. The administrator has access to the edit agency, which we just covered. Your manager does not have access to that, but otherwise the manager and the admin is the same. Now the difference between the staff and the remainder are quite a few, because for instance, you can choose which forms you don't want your staff to see. By default, they can't edit other staff's information, delete other staff's information, etc. So there's quite a bit of differences there. Now, those are the required fields, but as you can see here, you can add a number of other fields. Now, it is important to put their email address in, because without their email address, when you click add, they won't be emailed the username and password to log in. Now, we do know that there are certain exceptions for this, where some agencies will, their emails, they do not use emails, or some staff do not have access to emails. If you do not put an email in and you add the new staff, it will generate a temporary username and password so that they can log in. They will need to change that once they log in, just for security purposes. But so you can actually add staff without adding an email address. Now, additional sections, you can see address and phone information you can add for your staff. Training and certifications, this is where you will actually track the training and certifications that we discussed on the edit agency. So for instance, this staff that I'm adding in, let's say for instance we know they completed this training and we know that the date they actually completed it. And we know that maybe this is going to be renewed next year. So we can say, all right, in 2020, maybe October 1st, this is going to be renewed. And you can see that information there as well. You can also upload those certifications and you would have it right here in line in this section. So for all of the things that you've defined for your agency, you can go ahead and add them in. If you haven't defined them, then this list wouldn't show. You can delete the ones. We have some defaults, but you can delete the ones that do not make sense for you. Same thing with the staff checklist. So as you can see here, you can, let's say you are requiring that your staff need to have a copy of their driver's license. If you say yes, you will have the date received, the date of renewal as well. You can upload as many files related to that as well, okay? All right, let's continue on. Job references. You can track your job references. Simply click the plus button, add as many as you want for your staff. Written warnings, you can track that. You can again add as many as you want, and you can just delete the ones you don't want. Same thing with performance reviews. You can add them. You can even upload the files related to the performance reviews. So you can put the date of review, the reviewer assessment. You can track all of this information. Emergency contacts. You can see here, you can track the emergency contacts information for your staff. Staff signature. So you can upload your staff signature, or you can use like a MyLive signature. Once you've uploaded it, and if you've checked show staff signature on printed forms, then let's say for instance you're printing out a progress note, that staff signature will also appear on the progress note. And just in general, you can upload as many files related to this specific staff as you need. All right, and once you're done, you can simply click add or add a new, which will add and take you back to the screen to add another staff. All right, so once you have your staff in the system, the way it works is that in CareSoft, you have the ability, you see the plus button, which is to add, or the view and edit, which is to edit and delete or change the existing information. Some other things here to point out on the home screen, you have the alerts. So for instance, if you have training and certifications that are overdue, if you have medications that are overdue, they will display here on your left side. You have your menu. You can hide this menu. You can show the menu. You can switch it to dark mode if you're doing, documentation at night. Just want or if you just in general, it's just better for your eyesight, etc. You may want to switch to the dark mode. So you see the reporting options here. You have calendar. You have contact us, my account, and if you have access to the edit agency as well, you can log out. And then there are useful links now that we've added that. Remember we said we showed Google. Let's see here if we see it and you see the list of useful links, you can click and go to it. All right, so let's continue on with the onboarding. You see the list of forms. You see the ones that have been modified in the last 24 hours, in the last 7 days. So this just gives you a quick scan through to see what's happening with your agency. So instead of adding a staff, now I'm going to jump over to editing a staff. All right, so you can see here the list of staff that you have in your system. If you scroll from top to bottom, you see the active staff, and then at the bottom you see the inactive staff. We only charge you for the active staff that you've added into the system. So if you deactivate a staff and you want to keep their information, you can keep that information as long as you want. Matter of fact, we do not have a time limit. Even if you leave CareSoft, we will hold that information for you because we, from HIPAA compliance issues, we basically make sure we keep the information for at least 7 years, but we've just never deleted that data. All right, so you have access to this information, so don't have to worry about it. We've had agencies, come back a year later and say we want information from a staff that was hasn't worked for the agency for over a year, and we would just say simply activate the staff and you can see all the information related to that staff person. Again, we only charge you for the active staff. We charge $9.95 per active staff that's using the system. All right, you can see here at the bottom the inactive ones as well. Okay, so now we know how to add staff and edit staff. And let's go to residents. Same thing, you simply click the plus button to add a resident. The only thing that's required, first and last name, but you have a number of options here. You can see here service billing options. You can choose the billing codes. If we switch this, and I'll just jump back over to edit agency, we're going to switch this agency to use the track service billing with authorization. I'm going to go ahead and submit that. And now you'll see some additional options when you're adding this resident. All right, so let's go back to add resident. So again, first name, last name required. Now we see a section called resident billing. if I click the plus button, I can choose the service billing code, which I've defined in my edit agency. I can choose the authorization number. I can put a rate. I can say if this is active or not, the number of units. We calculate the total number of units remaining. You can put a start date and you can put an end date. Now, if you add that in with this resident, then you can do the billing based on that information. You can track housing information, intake questions, behavioral issues. You can add as many as you want, and in the system. Identification information. If you defined UCI as was your primary, it would show up here. If it was something else, that other one would show up as well. You can track this additional information. Summary and warning. Now, this is where you would put your full write-up about the software. This is the information that might go on an ISP, an IEP, or report for this resident. And then you can also put in some urgent issues and warnings that we'll display. You can track conservatory guardianship information, placing agency, caseworker information. You can assign residents to staff. So you have the option of, by default, we will assign all the residents to your staff. Some agencies will want to make this a very granular thing and only add the resident to maybe 1 or 2 staff. The problem with that is that if those staff are not available, they're on vacation, then no one can add medications, progress notes, etc. So just be mindful of that. And if necessary, by default, we always tell our agencies to use all staff unless they need to. You can track additional medical information, medical coverage, physical characteristics and diet, budgeting and bank account, unapproved, approved call list, so you can add who's approved or who's not approved to meet with or talk to your residents, emergency contact information, family information, relationships, etc. Track education, current school, previous school, also aftercare. So once they leave your facility, you may need to have a plan for them. What's the housing plan, education plan, etc. And if you've defined a resident checklist, that checklist will also show here, and you can say I've received this and maybe the date of renewal. And again, if something expires, it will show up on the home screen in the alert section. So again, you can add a new, which will add and take you back to the screen to add another resident. So once you've added all your residents in the system, same thing as progress as the staff, you can see a list of the residents, you can see all the active residents, and then the inactive residents, you can always activate, deactivate them. There's no cost as far as the residents is concerned. You can have 1 or 1,000. We basically charge you based on the number of staff that are active in the system, okay? And by the way, you saw that you can see the pictures of the residents. So if you've added the residents in there, you can see a list of the pictures as well when you're working with the residents. So now we've completed the getting started, signing up with CareSoft, and then also getting your system set up so that you can begin using it.